A homeless man shared his last meal with a stray dog, never realizing it would change both their lives forever. The January wind cut through Marcus Reed's threadbare coat like it wasn't there at all. 3 layers of salvaged clothing did little against Chicago's merciless winter. His fingers, red and cracked, clutched a small paper bag containing a hamburger. His first meal in nearly 30 hours. The smell tormented his empty stomach as he ducked into the relative shelter of an abandoned storefront's doorway. At 43, Marcus's face carried the weathered lines of a man who had seen better days. Many better days. 8 months on the streets had hollowed his once full cheeks and dimmed the light in his eyes. Before the accident at the construction site, before the medical bills and the eviction notices, he had been someone else entirely. Now, he was just another invisible man huddled against the cold, counting pennies and minutes until the shelter opened its doors at 7. He unwrapped the hamburger with reverence, his hands trembling slightly. From cold or anticipation, he couldn't tell anymore. The first bite was heaven. Marcus closed his eyes, savoring the warmth, the texture, the simple miracle of food. He chewed slowly, making each bite last, feeling the satisfaction spread through his empty belly. That's when he heard it, a soft whine, barely audible above the wind. Then again, more insistent. Marcus opened his eyes to see a dog watching him from a few feet away. Not a large dog, medium-sized with matted golden brown fur and intelligent eyes that seemed to hold a universe of sadness. The animal was thin, ribs visible even through its dirty coat, and it shivered visibly in the bitter cold. "Go on, get," Marcus muttered half-heartedly, taking another bite of his burger. The dog didn't move, only tilted its head slightly, those eyes never leaving the food. Marcus sighed. He knew hunger when he saw it. "I'm hungry too, you know," he said, his voice rough from disuse. The dog inched closer, its tail giving one hopeful swish. Something in Marcus's chest tightened. How many times had people looked through him, past him, as if he were nothing more than an inconvenient piece of scenery? How many times had he held out his cup only to watch eyes slide away, uncomfortable with his existence? "Damn it," he whispered, breaking off half of what remained of his burger. He held it out tentatively. "This is crazy. I must be losing my mind." The dog approached cautiously, taking the offering with surprising gentleness. It didn't gulp the food down as Marcus expected, but retreated a few steps to eat with the same slow appreciation Marcus himself had shown moments earlier. "You've got manners, at least," Marcus said, finishing his own portion in 2 quick bites. His stomach protested for more, but watching the dog eat stirred something he hadn't felt in months. A flicker of warmth that had nothing to do with food. The dog finished and looked up at him again. There was something strange about this animal. Despite its rough condition, its movements held a certain grace, and around its neck, nearly hidden by matted fur, was what appeared to be a weathered leather collar. "You lost, boy?" Marcus asked, extending his hand slowly. The dog hesitated, then moved forward to sniff his fingers. After a moment's consideration, it pressed its cold nose into his palm. Marcus scratched behind its ears, surprised at how natural the gesture felt. "You and me both, buddy. You and me both." As the evening deepened into night and the temperature dropped further, Marcus gathered his few possessions, preparing for the 6-block walk to the shelter. He stood wincing at the stiffness in his bad leg, a souvenir from the construction accident, and looked down at the dog, who watched him expectantly. "I can't take you with me," Marcus said. "They don't allow animals." The dog's tail stilled. Marcus shouldered his backpack, took 2 steps, then stopped. He looked back over his shoulder at the animal, sitting exactly where he'd left it, watching him with those 2 human eyes. "Ah, hell," Marcus muttered, turning back. Come on then. We'll figure something out." The dog trotted to his side, falling into step beside him as if they'd been walking together for years. 2 miles across town, in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, Alexandra Chen paced the length of her living room for the 100th time that day. The wall of windows showcased city lights glittering across the water, a view that had cost millions but now failed to bring her any peace. "It's been 3 weeks, Nick," she said into her phone, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "The reward is now at 50,000. I've had every flyer in the city plastered with his photo. Where could he possibly be?" On the other end, her assistant tried to sound reassuring. "We've got the best pet detectives in the Midwest looking for him, miss him. Chen. Rusty will turn up." Alexandra closed her eyes, pressing cool fingers against her temples. "He's not just a pet, Nick. He's..." Her voice faltered. After hanging up, she moved to the mantel where silver-framed photographs chronicled a life of privilege and success. Alexandra Chen, 38, self-made tech millionaire, featured in Fortune and Forbes, delivering TED Talks and keynote speeches around the world. And in almost every photo taken in the last 5 years, a handsome golden retriever sat or stood beside her. She picked up her favorite, Rusty, with his head on her lap as she worked on her laptop in the garden of her vacation home. James had taken that photo, back when they were still together, before he decided her dedication to her company was pathological, and moved out, leaving her with the dog they'd adopted together. "Where are you, my boy?" she whispered to the photograph. "Please be safe." Alexandra had everything money could buy, but what she'd never tell the press, her board of directors, or even her closest friends, was that some nights, especially in the last year, the only thing that kept crushing loneliness at bay was the warm weight of Rusty curled against her side. 3 weeks ago, during a rare snowstorm, a temporary dog walker had left the front gate unsecured. Now, the half of her heart that still knew how to love something unconditionally was lost somewhere in a city of nearly 3 million people. The night shelter was full, as always, but John, the intake volunteer who'd come to know Marcus over the months, shook his head regretfully when he saw the dog. "You know I can't let him in, Mark. Health codes." Marcus nodded, already turning to leave, but John called after him. "Wait." He reached under the counter and pulled out a worn but clean blanket. "Take this at least. It's supposed to drop below 0 tonight." "Thanks," Marcus said, genuine gratitude in his voice. Outside again, Marcus considered his options. The dog looked up at him, shivering but patient, as if trusting him to figure things out. "I know a place," Marcus finally said. "It's not much, but it's out of the wind." The place was an abandoned building scheduled for demolition in the spring. Marcus had discovered a basement entrance where the lock had rusted away, giving access to a space that, while cold and damp, at least provided walls against the wind. Other homeless individuals occasionally used it, but most preferred the shelters on bitter nights like this. The space was empty when they arrived. Marcus spread the blanket in a corner where 2 walls met, creating a small nest. He sat down heavily, his bad leg throbbing, and patted the space beside him. "Come on then, body heat's the best we've got tonight." The dog didn't need a second invitation. It curled against Marcus's side, its body trembling slightly. "You're a sad sight," Marcus said softly, running his hand over the matted fur. "Almost as bad as me." His fingers found the collar again, and this time he leaned closer to examine it in the dim light filtering through a high, dirt-streaked window. The leather was expensive, though weather-damaged now. A small metal tag hung from it, but the engraving was too worn to read in the poor light. Marcus made a mental note to check it in the morning. "You probably belonged to somebody once," he murmured. "Somebody who's missing you." The dog sighed, a deep, almost human sound, and rested its head on Marcus's thigh. For the first time in months, despite the cold, despite his hunger, despite the hard concrete beneath the thin blanket, Marcus felt a small measure of peace. Responsibility for another living thing straightened his shoulders slightly, gave purpose to his movements as he arranged their meager nest. "We should give you a name," he said, continuing to stroke the dog's filthy coat. "Can't just keep calling you dog, can I?" The animal's ears perked up. "How about one, Lucky?" Marcus gave a dry laugh. "Though that's a bit ironic given our situation." The dog seemed unimpressed. "Buddy?" "No, too generic." Marcus thought for a moment. "How about Chance? Because that's what we both need, isn't it?" "A second chance." At this, the dog lifted its head and licked Marcus's hand once, then settled back down. "Chance it is, then," Marcus said, a small smile touching his lips for the first time in weeks. "Nice to meet you, Chance." "I'm Marcus." As the temperature continued to drop, man and dog huddled closer together. Marcus pulled his coat tighter around both of them as best he could, grateful for the animal's warmth against his side. He found himself talking more than he had in months, telling Chance about his life before. The construction job he'd been good at, the small apartment that had felt like a palace compared to his current circumstances, the girlfriend who couldn't handle his depression after the accident and left. "Not that I blame her," Marcus said into the darkness. "I wasn't much company then. Still not, probably." Chance nudged his hand with a cold nose. Yeah, you're stuck with me now, I guess." Eventually, exhaustion overcame discomfort, and Marcus drifted off to sleep, one hand resting protectively on his new companion's back. Morning brought watery sunlight and a new resolve. Marcus woke stiff and cold, but with a clarity he hadn't felt in months. Having Chance beside him somehow made his own situation both more precarious and more purposeful. The dog needed food, needed care, which meant Marcus needed to do better than scavenging in shelters. In the light of day, he finally examined the tag on Chance's collar. Time and elements had worn away much of the engraving, but he could just make out what might be an R at the beginning of the name and a partial phone number. Only the first 3 digits were legible. The rest had been scratched away. Well, that's not much help. Marcus sighed. But you're definitely somebody's dog. Or you were. Chance wagged his tail hopefully. Don't worry, I won't try to find them until you're looking a bit more presentable, Marcus said, scratching behind the dog's ears. Can't have them thinking I mistreated you. First order of business was food. For both of them. Marcus gathered his few possessions, and they set out into the cold morning. His usual spot for panhandling was the corner of Michigan and Randolph, where tourists and office workers might spare some change. Today, he added a new message to his cardboard sign: "Need food for me and my dog." To his surprise, the addition of Chance changed everything. People who would normally hurry past with averted eyes slowed to pet the dog. A woman in a business suit dropped a $10 bill in his cup. "Get something for your friend there," she said with a smile. By lunchtime, Marcus had collected enough for sandwiches for himself and a can of dog food for Chance. They ate sitting on a bench in Millennium Park, Chance devouring his portion with enthusiasm before settling at Marcus's feet, alert but relaxed. "You're good business," Marcus told him, feeling the unfamiliar stretch of a smile on his face. "Maybe I should have gotten a dog months ago." A passing mother with 2 small children slowed, the kids pointing excitedly at Chance. Marcus tensed, expecting to be shooed away as he often was when families passed, but instead the mother approached. "May they pet your dog?" she asked. "They've been begging for one, and I want them to understand the responsibility." Marcus nodded, surprised. "His name is Chance. He's friendly." As the children carefully stroked Chance's fur under their mother's watchful eye, Marcus found himself explaining that he'd only just found the dog himself, that they were both a bit down on their luck. "He needs a bath," the woman observed, not unkindly. "There's a pet store about 3 blocks from here that has self-service dog washing stations. It's not too expensive." Before they left, she pressed a 20 into Marcus's hand. "For the dog wash," she said simply. "Everyone deserves to be clean and warm." Marcus watched them go, the 20 clutched in his hand, feeling something shift inside him. He looked down at Chance, who gazed back with those intelligent eyes. "What do you say, boy? Shall we get you cleaned up?" The pet store was warm and brightly lit, filled with the sounds of birds chirping and the smell of kibble and cedar shavings. Marcus hesitated at the entrance, suddenly acutely aware of his own disheveled appearance. The young man behind the counter looked up, his expression cycling quickly from wariness to curiosity as he noticed Chance. Can I help you?" Marcus straightened his shoulders. "I need to use your dog washing station." "For my dog." The clerk nodded, pointing toward the back. "It's $12 for 30 minutes. Includes shampoo and towels." Marcus counted out the money from his day's earnings, following the clerk to a room with several raised tubs. Only one other person was there, a middle-aged woman washing a tiny Yorkshire Terrier who looked about as enthusiastic about the process as Chance did when Marcus led him to an empty tub. "First time?" the woman asked, noticing his hesitation. Marcus nodded, embarrassed. "That obvious, huh?" She smiled. "We all start somewhere. Want some help?" Her name was Darlene, and she showed Marcus how to use the sprayer, how much shampoo to use, how to work through the matted fur gently. Chance endured the process with surprising dignity, only shaking himself vigorously once, sending water spraying over both humans, which made Darlene laugh. "He's a handsome boy under all that dirt," she observed as clean golden brown fur emerged. "Looks like he might have some retriever in him." As Marcus worked the lather through Chance's coat, his fingers found something he hadn't noticed before. A small, hard lump embedded in the fur at the scruff of the neck. "What's this?" he murmured, working to see it better. "Could be a burr or something stuck in his fur," Darlene suggested, leaning closer. "Or," she squinted, "actually, that looks like one of those microchips. They're subcutaneous identification tags. Vets and shelters can scan them to find the owner's information." Marcus's hands stilled. A microchip. Of course, a dog with such an expensive collar would be chipped. He should have realized. "That means he definitely belongs to someone," he said, a heaviness settling in his chest. Darlene nodded. "Any vet can scan him for you, if you're trying to find his owner." "Right," Marcus said quietly. "Of course." When Chance was clean, dried, and looking like an entirely different dog, handsome indeed with a rich golden coat that still needed brushing but shone under the lights, Marcus thanked Darlene and led Chance back out into the cold. They walked in silence for several blocks. Marcus lost in thought. He should take Chance to a vet, have the chip scanned, find the owner who was surely missing him. It was the right thing to do. But the thought of giving up the one companion who had made him feel human again in months was almost unbearable. "It's not like I can keep you anyway," Marcus said aloud as they reached the park where they'd eaten lunch. "I can barely take care of myself." Chance looked up at him, seeming to understand every word. Marcus sank onto a bench and Chance settled at his feet. "One more day," Marcus decided, scratching behind the dog's ears. "We'll get you back to your people tomorrow. Today, let's just..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Let's just pretend I'm not alone. Let's just enjoy having a friend. Let's just be normal for a little while." As if sensing his distress, Chance stood and placed his head on Marcus's knee, looking up with those soulful eyes. "Yeah," Marcus whispered hoarsely. "I know." That night, they returned to the abandoned building. Marcus had used some of the day's earnings to buy a cheap dog brush, and he sat cross-legged on their blanket, methodically working through Chance's coat until it gleamed, even in the dim light. The repetitive motion was soothing for them both. "You know," Marcus said as he worked, "before the accident, I had plans. I was saving for night classes, wanted to become a building inspector. Had a girlfriend, Sheila. She was a nurse. We talked about getting married someday." He sighed. "Then a support beam failed, and I fell 2 stories. Busted up my leg, my back. Couldn't work construction anymore." Chance listened attentively, occasionally licking Marcus's hand when he paused. "Workers' comp ran out. Medical bills piled up. Sheila tried, I'll give her that. But watching someone spiral gets old fast." He set the brush down, suddenly tired. "Can't blame her. I wasn't exactly pleasant company." Marcus leaned back against the wall, and Chance immediately settled against his side, resting his head on Marcus's thigh as he had the night before. "Tomorrow we find your people," Marcus said softly, stroking the now clean fur. "Wonder what they're like. Bet they've got a nice warm house. Plenty of food." His voice caught slightly. "They probably miss you a lot." Chance sighed deeply, pressing closer. "Yeah, I'd miss you too," Marcus admitted. "Already, and it's only been a day." That night, for the first time in months, Marcus dreamed not of falling, not of bills and eviction notices, but of open fields and sunlight, and a golden dog running joyfully beside him. Morning came too soon. Marcus woke to find Chance already alert, watching him with expectant eyes. All right, Marcus grumbled good-naturedly. "I hear you. Breakfast first, then." He swallowed. "Then we find your family." They repeated yesterday's routine, setting up on the same corner with the sign. The clean, handsome dog attracted even more attention. And by mid-morning, Marcus had enough for a decent breakfast for both of them and bus fare to the animal shelter Darlene had mentioned, where they could scan Chance's microchip for free. As they sat eating breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast for Marcus, more canned dog food for Chance, in a small diner whose owner had taken pity on them and allowed the dog inside, Marcus found himself talking to his companion as if he could understand every word. "You've been good for me," he said quietly. "Made me remember what it's like to care about something. Someone." He pushed his eggs around on his plate. "I'd keep you if I could. But you deserve better than what I can give you right now." Chance tilted his head, those intelligent eyes never leaving Marcus's face. "Don't look at me like that. Your people probably have a nice yard for you to run in. Proper dog food, not this canned stuff. Toys." Marcus smiled faintly. "Bet you've got a whole basket of tennis balls somewhere." At the word balls, Chance's ears perked up noticeably. Marcus laughed, the sound surprising even himself. "You like balls, huh? Should have guessed. Retriever and all that." The bus to the animal shelter was nearly empty mid-morning. The driver raised an eyebrow at Chance, but didn't object when Marcus explained their destination. They sat at the back, Chance's head resting on Marcus's knee as the city passed by outside the windows. "They'll be happy to see you," Marcus said, more to himself than to the dog. "Probably been looking everywhere." The shelter was a low brick building with cheerful paw prints painted on the doors. Inside, the reception area was bright and clean, with posters of adoptable animals covering the walls. A young woman looked up from the desk, her smile faltering slightly as she took in Marcus's worn clothing, but warming again when she saw Chance. "Can I help you?" Marcus cleared his throat. "I found this dog a couple days ago. He has a microchip. I was hoping you could scan it, help me find his owners." The receptionist nodded, coming around the desk. "Of course. He's beautiful." "But what's his name?" "I've been calling him Chance," Marcus said. But I don't know his real name. Well, let's find out, she said, retrieving a handheld scanner. She ran it over Chance's neck, and the device beeped. Got it. Let me just look up this number. As she returned to her computer, Marcus knelt beside Chance. This is it, buddy, he said softly. You're going home. Chance licked his face once gently. I'll miss you too, Marcus whispered, his throat tight. But this is for the best. Here we are, the receptionist said, eyes on her screen. The chip is registered to... Wow, Alexandra Chen. She looked up at Marcus with widened eyes. The tech CEO? Seriously? Marcus blinked. I don't know who that is. The receptionist quickly turned her monitor so he could see the screen. Alexandra Chen, founder of Nexusoft? She's been in the news constantly for the past few weeks, offering a huge reward for her lost dog. She glanced at Chance. Rusty. That's his real name. There's a whole social media campaign. Find Rusty has been trending. Marcus stared at the screen, where a professional photograph showed a stunning Asian American woman in business attire, a younger, cleaner version of Chance sitting proudly beside her. $50,000 reward, he read aloud, disbelieving. I need to call this in right away, the receptionist said, already reaching for the phone. This is amazing. As she dialed, Marcus sat heavily on a nearby bench. Chance, no, Rusty, settling beside him as if nothing had changed. $50,000. It was an incomprehensible amount of money to someone who had been counting quarters for meals. They'll send a car right away, the receptionist told him excitedly after hanging up. Miss, Chen's assistant is contacting her now. They've asked if you can wait here. Marcus nodded numbly. Of course. The next hour passed in a blur. More shelter staff appeared, making over Rusty, offering Marcus coffee, taking his statement about how he'd found the dog. He answered mechanically, one hand never leaving Rusty's fur, anchoring himself to the present moment through that contact. $50,000 would change everything. He could get an apartment, clean clothes, a phone. He could look for work, maybe even pursue those night classes he'd once dreamed about. It was a second chance in the most literal sense. Yet as the minutes ticked by, Marcus found himself fixating not on the reward, but on the imminent separation from the companion who had in just 2 days reminded him what it felt like to be needed, to be worthy of trust and affection. Mr. Reed? The receptionist appeared at his side. Thundenham. They're here. Marcus looked up to see a sleek black car pulling into the shelter's parking lot. A moment later, the front doors burst open and a woman rushed in. The same woman from the photograph, though her perfect appearance was now somewhat disheveled, her face flushed with emotion. Alexandra Chen scanned the room frantically, then froze as her eyes landed on the dog sitting quietly beside Marcus. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Rusty's tail began to wag, slowly at first, then with increasing enthusiasm. Rusty? Alexandra's voice broke on the name. Oh my God, Rusty. She dropped to her knees and the dog, her dog, bounded across the room to her, whining with joy, tail whipping back and forth as he nearly knocked her over in his excitement. Marcus watched as Alexandra buried her face in Rusty's fur, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I thought I'd lost you forever, she was saying between tears. I looked everywhere. Everywhere. Something in Marcus's chest both ached and warmed at the sight. This was right. This was where Rusty belonged, with someone who clearly loved him desperately, who could give him everything he needed. After a long moment, Alexandra looked up, her tear-streaked face finally focusing on Marcus. She stood, one hand still clutching Rusty's collar, as if afraid he might disappear again. You found him? She asked, approaching Marcus slowly. Marcus nodded, suddenly self-conscious of his worn clothes, his unshaven face. 2 nights ago, he was hungry, so I shared my food. Didn't know he was yours. Alexandra's gaze was intense, taking in every detail of the man who had returned her beloved pet. You shared your food, she repeated softly, even though her eyes moved over his threadbare jacket, the backpack that clearly contained all his worldly possessions. An understanding dawned in her expression. You've been taking care of him, she said. All this time. Just 2 days, Marcus corrected. He's a good dog, deserved better than what I could give him, but I did my best. Alexandra's face softened. You bathed him, Marcus nodded again. Lady at the pet store helped me. That's where I learned about the microchip. Alexandra looked down at Rusty, who was now moving between her and Marcus, seemingly unable to decide where to settle. He likes you, she observed. He doesn't usually warm up to strangers. We understand each other, Marcus said simply. A man in a suit, obviously Alexandra's assistant, stepped forward, holding out an envelope. "Miss, Chen would like to present you with the offered reward," he said formally. $50,000 as advertised. Marcus stared at the envelope, all his dreams of a fresh start contained in that simple paper rectangle. Yet something held him back from reaching for it. "I didn't do it for a reward," he said slowly. He looked at Rusty, who was watching him with those soulful eyes. "I was alone. He was alone. We helped each other." Alexandra waved her assistant back, never taking her eyes off Marcus. "What's your name?" she asked. "Marcus. Marcus Reed." "Do you have somewhere to go, Marcus Reed?" The kindness in her voice almost undid him. "I get by," he said, the practiced response automatic. Alexandra nodded once, decisive. "I'd like to buy you lunch," she said, "to thank you properly, and to hear the whole story of how you found Rusty." Before Marcus could respond, she added, "Please, it would mean a lot to me." And so, in a turn of events that seemed unreal, Marcus found himself sitting in an upscale cafe an hour later. Rusty settled contentedly between them as he recounted the full story of the past 2 days to Alexandra Chen, tech millionaire and apparently devoted dog owner. She listened without interruption, her eyes occasionally filling with tears as he described finding Rusty in the cold, sharing his meager meal, spending the night huddled together for warmth. He was a perfect gentleman, Marcus concluded with a small smile. Even when he was starving, he took the food gently. Didn't gobble it down. Alexandra smiled fondly at her dog. "I got him from a rescue 5 years ago. He'd been abused by his previous owners. Took months before he would trust me. The fact that he went to you so readily." She met Marcus's eyes. "It says a lot about you." Marcus looked down at his plate, uncomfortable with the praise. "Just did what anyone would do." "No," Alexandra said firmly. "That's not true at all. Most people wouldn't share their last meal with a stray dog, especially when they were hungry themselves." There was a moment of silence, broken only by the gentle thump of Rusty's tail against the floor. "The reward," Alexandra said finally. "It's yours. No strings attached." Marcus nodded, throat tight. "Thank you. It will change everything. But," Alexandra continued, leaning forward slightly, "I'd like to offer you something else as well." "A job?" Marcus looked up, startled. "A job? I need a facilities manager for my personal properties. Someone detail-oriented with construction knowledge." She held his gaze steadily. "Someone Rusty trusts." Marcus stared at her, speechless. "It comes with an apartment, the caretaker's suite at my lake house. Nothing fancy, but it's comfortable. Full benefits, of course." She smiled slightly. "And you'd see Rusty every day." "Why?" Marcus finally managed. "You don't know anything about me." Alexandra glanced down at Rusty, who had rested his head on Marcus's foot under the table. "I know enough," she said simply, "and the rest we can figure out as we go." Marcus looked from Alexandra to Rusty and back again, feeling the ground shifting beneath him. Not in the terrifying way it had when his life had first fallen apart, but like stepping onto a new path, one he couldn't see the end of, but that led away from the cold and the loneliness. "I'd need to think about it," he said, not because he wasn't grateful, but because accepting such an offer meant believing in second chances in a way he hadn't allowed himself to for a very long time. Alexandra nodded, respecting his caution. "Of course, the offer stands whenever you're ready." She hesitated, then added more softly, "You saved something irreplaceable to me, Marcus. Something no amount of money could ever replace. I don't forget things like that." As they left the cafe, Rusty walked between them, occasionally looking up at one human then the other, as if to make sure both were still there. At the curb, Alexandra's car waited. "Can we drop you somewhere?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "I'll walk. Need to clear my head." "All right." She handed him a business card. "My personal number is on the back. Call me about the job or the reward or..." She smiled slightly. "Or if you just want to check on Rusty." Marcus pocketed the card carefully. "Thank you." As Alexandra opened the car door, Rusty balked, looking back at Marcus with what could only be described as distress. "It's okay, boy," Alexandra coaxed. "Come on," Rusty whined, moving to stand beside Marcus. Marcus knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with the dog who had changed everything in just 2 days. "Go on," he said softly. "Go home. I'll see you again." Rusty licked his face once, a solemn goodbye before finally jumping into the car. As the vehicle pulled away, Marcus saw the dog's face pressed against the back window, watching him until the car turned a corner and disappeared from sight. Marcus stood alone on the sidewalk, the weight of the business card in his pocket both terrifying and exhilarating. A second chance. For both of them. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the dock extending into Lake Michigan, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson. He wore new jeans and a warm jacket appropriate for the early spring evening. His hair was neatly trimmed, his face clean-shaven. Behind him, the Chen Lake House rose in elegant lines of glass and cedar, lights beginning to glow in the windows as dusk deepened. From his apartment in the East Wing, he could see both the lake and the meticulously maintained grounds that were now partly his responsibility. The sound of paws on the wooden planks made him turn. Rusty bounded toward him, a tennis ball clutched in his mouth, Alexandra following at a more sedate pace. Again, Marcus asked the dog with mock exasperation. We've been at this for an hour. Rusty dropped the ball at his feet, tail wagging hopefully. He's relentless, Alexandra said, coming to stand beside Marcus. Always has been. Marcus picked up the ball and threw it back toward the lawn. Rusty took off after it, a streak of gold against the darkening grass. Like someone else I know, Alexandra said quietly. I got the quarterly maintenance report. The contractors said you caught a potential foundation issue that could have cost thousands if left unchecked. Marcus shrugged. Just doing my job. You're good at it. Alexandra's voice held genuine respect. Better than good. They stood in companionable silence, watching Rusty race back toward them with his prize. In the months since that fateful meeting at the animal shelter, a friendship had developed between employer and employee that neither had expected but both valued, born of mutual respect and a shared love for the dog who had brought them together. I've been thinking, Alexandra said as Rusty dropped the ball again, about expanding the facilities management into a proper department, multiple properties, larger team. She glanced at Marcus. It would need a director. Marcus looked at her surprised. Are you offering me a promotion? I've only been here 6 months. 6 months in which you've proven yourself a dozen times over. She smiled. Think about it. No rush. As Alexandra turned to head back to the house, Rusty surprising them both by choosing to stay with Marcus, she added over her shoulder, Oh, and Marcus, dinner's at 7. Don't be late this time. Marcus watched her go, then looked down at Rusty, who gazed back with the same intelligent eyes that had first connected with his on that cold January evening. You planned this all along, didn't you? He asked the dog. Rusty's tail wagged once, a gesture that might have been agreement. Marcus laughed, picking up the ball and throwing it one more time. As Rusty raced after it, Marcus felt the last piece of his old self, the man who had given up, who had stopped believing in possibility, finally fall away. A homeless man had shared his last meal with a stray dog, never realizing it was a millionaire's lost pet. But more importantly, he had never realized that simple act of kindness would not just change his circumstances, but restore his faith in himself, in connection, in the possibility that sometimes second chances come in the most unexpected forms. As Rusty returned with the ball, Marcus knelt to ruffle the soft golden fur behind his ears. Thank you, he whispered to the dog who had saved him as surely as he had saved the dog. Rusty simply pressed closer, his warm presence a reminder that sometimes the greatest wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the courage to open one's heart, even when you have nothing else to give.